Hello dudes and dudettes, it's me, E.H. Ivins, and this is another episode of The Radical Reset. Today we're going to talk about how do we get out of this mess. And it's going to be a segue from the last video I did on universal basic income, which is an aspect of this, but let me just back up. So this morning, as I got ready to decide what it was I was going to finally do in this video, I saw the economic reports come out from both Europe and the United States. The European economy is down 40%. The American economy is down 32%. To give you some idea of how severe that is, at the Great Crash, the Great Recession of 2008, the economic drop in economic output was 9%. And that was the Great Recession. The Great Depression was not much more than that. This is on a whole new level. Now, the thing that's giving the government hope, the thing that the politicians are selling us, the thing that both the Democrats and the Republicans, for that matter, want to sell us is that somehow this is all going to bounce back to normal if we just do what they want us to do. And really, it's only a pause in economic activity as opposed to an actual drop. That's what they'd like to have us believe. They'd like to have us believe we shut everything down because of COVID, and now we can, if we just do it right, if we just transition out of it right, we can start everything back up again, and we can be right back to, nearly universal employment and live happily ever after and be on our merry way. And if you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. Now, also, as I speak to you, it's July the 31st, and I thought that by today they would have come up with some sort of package to extend unemployment insurance from the current enhanced, quote unquote, unemployment insurance of $600 a week on top of the state maximum. And they haven't done it yet. Now, of course, the day isn't over, and I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. And I can tell you exactly what's going to happen if they don't pass it. The middle class, particularly the lower middle class, once again, will take it right up the ass. That's what they do. That's what the elites do. I promise you that they're fine up there in their ivory towers. The politicians are all going to eat tonight. They're all going to be able to get their rents paid. But the average American, prior to this whole disaster, was only 2 paychecks away from on the street. That is an absolute truism. That's how much savings the average middle class person has or had before this started. Now, the good news, the one piece of good news I saw in all the statistics was the savings rate is way up. It's gone from next to nothing to like 27%. So a lot of people, what they've been doing with their extra money they've been getting and from both the $1,200 stimulus check and the enhanced unemployment, evidently, is to put a lot of it away, which is rational, which gives me hope. Okay, rationality gives me hope. But the government isn't rational. So anyway, I came up with a 6-point program of what to do to get out of this mess. Now, before I go into it, I'm going to start by saying it's not going to happen. When I did the universal basic income video last time, boy, have I caught hell from a lot of people over that, particularly the libertarian types who wanted to call me a communist about it. But this isn't a time for ideology. But ideology is great and makes a great talking point. We can, have a cocktail party and bitch and moan about this, that, or the other thing. But the fact of the matter is, this is a time for action. And the government is going to, the Democrats basically, Pelosi, who might win the award, I think, for the single most cynical human being possible, has come up with a $3 trillion plan that she knew was dead on arrival when she came up with it. It's really just an election talking point. And the Republicans, basically up until today, this moment, have come up with nothing. Basically, what they always do, Democrat program light. When I say Republicans, I'm talking about the mainstream. And what Trump's doing, of course, is trying to make a deal, thrashing around. And this is where he becomes, what I've said before, that he's the wrong man elected for the right reasons. This is where he becomes the wrong man, because he has no particular, that I can discern anyway, strategic vision other than to drain the swamp, which is a noble vision. But in a situation like this, we need more than, the goal of draining the swamp, which he has been, somewhat successful at up until this point. This isn't a time to just, fiddle around the edges. This is a time to really act. But it's not going to happen. And the fact of the matter is, I'm not sure what's going to happen. We could easily slip into depression over this. Another quarter of this, and effectively, statistically, we're in a depression. There's no doubt about it. Plus, by the way, those of you who might recall, was it maybe a month or two ago, I did an episode where I said to buy 2 things, cryptocurrency and gold. Speaking from my own cryptocurrency account, I'm up about 50%. Cryptos are going ape, and as of this morning, for example, Bitcoin was trading over 11,000. When I made the video, it was trading at 9,000. And let's see what else. And by the way, and I own others that I understand that wasn't 50%, but I own other crypto accounts. And that, by the way, is just in a very short period of time. And gold is topped over $1,800 an ounce, heading to 2,000. And believe me when I tell you, but before this is all said and done, easily gold will hit $10,000 an ounce. I know how absurd that sounds to the mainstream among you, and I know that there are people out there who buy into modern monetary theory. Modern monetary theory, by the way, I refer to it from time to time. Let me just give it to you in a quick little nutshell. Modern monetary theory says that basically we consumers exist only to circulate the money the government prints back to it in the form of taxes. As long as we have to pay our taxes in the currency that the government prints, then the currency always carries value, so long as the government doesn't print way too much. And that can be anything. It depends on the situation. So if you believe in modern monetary theory, I'm sure I've already lost you in this. Basically, it's an excuse to print all the money you possibly want. Now, I understand that sophisticated economists, like, for example, Paul Krugman, could sit down and make it sound all very scientific, but it really comes down to what I just said. It's basically the government can print money ad infinitum, and since you have to pay your taxes in the same currency, well, then the currency won't lose value, which, of course, is bullshit. But that aside, that's what they're doing. They're printing money ad infinitum and praying to God it doesn't cause a hyperinflation, but we will see. Anyway, so my program, my 6-step program that I'm about to outline, isn't going to happen. It would only happen in an anti-political Congress, because part of it is being truthful, and part of it is being, in the view of the mainstream, very radical. But this is the radical reset, so this is a radical solution. This is what I would do, what I think an anti-politist legislature would do when you're dealing with grown-ups with skin in the game, who are selected, not elected, so they're not corrupted by special interests. They're neither, billionaires, nor are they paupers on the street. They're the great middle class who are out there, and that's who's in the legislature, with no politics, no political careers, and they're just there to do the right thing. That's what anti-politism promises. People who are there to do the right thing. It doesn't promise an ideology so much as it promises a system that is nearly perfect. But you can cover that when you pick up your free copy of The Radical Reset from Amazon. But in the meantime, when I say pick up, I mean download. If you want to pick up a copy, there's a slight fee. I don't want to mislead you. All right, so let's go. Step number 1. I modeled this step after the Swedish. When the COVID-19 outbreak, and it's hard to believe it was like 6 months ago, it was January when we were barely getting aware of it, February when we became kind of aware of it, and then March when it all went apeshit. So when it all was going apeshit, the Swedish, the country of Sweden, who, by the way, is not a socialist country. For those of you who hold Sweden up, and I constantly get this from the left, look, Sweden's socialism works. Sweden dumped socialism in the 1980s. Read up, kids. The only thing remotely socialist about Sweden is they do have national health care, but it's a 2-tiered system that people who have money can opt out of, and it's a much different programming. It's a much smaller country. But anyway, I'm putting all that aside. I want to talk about Sweden and COVID. I don't want to get off into some weird digression. Okay, Sweden said the price we would have to pay economically is too great. We're not going to shut down our economy. We're going to isolate those most at risk, the very elderly and the people with the health conditions that might lead them to be vulnerable, that are particularly in my age group and older. I'm 63, but basically 60 and older with emphysema, heart disease, lung disease, things that might weaken them to begin with. They're the people most at risk. Isolate them. Everybody else, use common sense, use some distancing, use masks when appropriate, yada yada yada. But the restaurants stayed open, the businesses stayed open, everything stayed open. Their economy is still open, and in the beginning their death rate was higher than their neighbors of Denmark and Norway, who went to total isolation like the rest of Europe. However, yada yada yada, which is my way of saying speeding up till today, they're in a better situation. Their death rate is a fraction of their neighbors. Their economy is not destroyed. Their people are still working, and their death rate has gone down to negligible. In other words, their idea was they would achieve mass immunity by allowing people to get sick that were healthy, and if they get infected, they get infected. Which leads me, by the way, just a small digression, but on subject. What good does testing do without a treatment? We're testing like crazy. We're finding out people have been exposed by the thousands and didn't get sick. That's one of the lessons we're learning from testing. The question is, what good is all this without a treatment. We do not have a vaccine to prevent. We do not have a treatment for. If you get COVID, basically, they're going to make you very, very comfortable, and they have a number of prophylactic treatments, if that's the right word. No, prophylactic is preventive. That's not the right word. Palliative. Palliative is the word I was looking for. Treatments just to make you feel better and get you through and hopefully have you avoid the ventilator. But in the end, you got to ride it out. So I'm not quite sure. I guess we have a statistical idea of when it's over is the best way to look at the testing. But anyway. So I would do exactly the same thing. Rather than do a second shutdown, what do they want to do? Print up another $4 or $8 trillion to try to keep us alive again when they sink us down to the pits? We're already down 32% and 40% in Europe. How much more can we sink it? The second shutdown is insane. I would open the country up. If I were the governors of the states and Trump as well, I'd be urging open. But isolate, just like the Swedish did, continue to isolate the most at risk. Everybody else practice common sense social distancing and prevention. No one is saying go out in the streets and breathe on each other and pretend like you're in a mass rally with no masks on, you people who went to the Trump rally and killed Herman Cain. God rest his soul, but that's probably where he got the COVID. Just saying. That's not what I'm talking about. And obviously the poor man was at risk. I'm saying use common sense distancing, wash your hands, wear a mask where appropriate, yada, 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 but open it back up. Open everything back up. No more shut restaurants. Everything open up. Let's go back and try to get this baby started. Now, that means in the beginning at least, we're going to get a certain number of deaths. And the idea is those deaths are preventable. But are they really? I mean, we're talking about a very fragile population to begin with. And maybe we have to be grown-ups about this and accept that a lot of these people were going to die anyway. We're all going to die. And I know how cold that sounds. But when you're talking about the at-risk population, do you destroy the lives of 300 million for 100,000 more? I don't know. And this is a hard judgment. This is. But that's if there's a reason for government at all, it's for people in a position to know what the facts and statistics are to make the tough calls. And I don't see this as any different than making the decision to send our boys to war. Why would this be any less important? And in fact, it's even more important because when we sent the troops to Iraq and Afghanistan, there was absolutely no chance that Al Qaeda or the Caliphate or anybody else was going to invade the United States. Oh, they might infiltrate and they might carry out an act of terror, but there was no threat to our culture and our country from invasion from the other side. In this case, okay, we're talking about basically a world war with a hidden enemy, and we're going to have to accept that there are going to be some casualties. And we have to take a look at the whole thing. And rather than worry about and try to prevent every death today at the expense of destroying everybody's lives, maybe there's a cost-benefit analysis to be done here and to accept, again, isolate people in nursing homes and at risk and so on and so forth. God, if you lived here in Phoenix, where I live, and you go out to Sun City, the place it's like God's waiting room. It's like a morgue out there. There's barely a golf cart, and for good reason. There's a huge at-risk population of people out there in Sun City. But, in other words, people my age and older who have, well, you should see how many pills. I mean, Jesus Christ, I take more pills than I can ever believe. By the way, I have none of those three conditions. But having said that, as you get older, you pick up these different things. Like, for example, I had a cortisone shot done in my left shoulder because I have arthritis. And growing old isn't for pussies, guys. That's all I can tell you. But anyway, you get where I'm going with this. Step number one is open up the economy, isolate the most at risk, and accept the fact that there's going to be some deaths. As cold as it is, this is not nearly what they projected. We're not getting millions and millions and millions of people dying. Thank God children aren't dying. This pandemic presents us an opportunity to work our way out of it, and thank God our children primarily are not at risk. Step number two, and I know all you anti-vaccine people are just nuts, but the FDA has to step out of the way. Everybody has to step out of the way. We got to develop a vaccine as soon as possible. And as soon as it's developed, make it available. And this is a case where ideology be damned, free of charge. This thing has to come out and everybody needs to get immunized as quickly as possible. Now, when I say that, I am not talking about mandatory immunizations. Look, this is a free country. You pays your money, you takes your chances. You don't believe in vaccines? You think they're going to hurt you? You believe in all this mumbo jumbo? You think the thimerosal is going to cause your baby to have autism? Whatever the case might be, I realize that's just one point among many. A nutty point, by the way, that you people make. But anyway, look, I'm a vaccinator. Most of us are vaccinators. As quickly as possible, get a vaccine. As quickly as possible, immunize everybody, and then we're out of there. But in the meantime, and get all the regulators out of the way. In other words, the drug companies are not going to poison the world on purpose. That's just not going to happen. They're going to work very, very hard to produce a safe vaccine. I'm not saying, don't let them. Drug companies, you follow your procedures, you do your job, you develop the vaccine, you make sure it's safe. Regulators, get the fuck out of the way and let's get this thing to market as fast as we possibly can. Step 3, and here comes the part that's we have an opportunity here. Okay, tax revenues are obviously way, way down. We need to make a change, and our choice here really is this: modern monetary theory, and try to spend our way out of this on top of all the other shit we're doing, debase the currency, cause a hyperinflation, I believe, and ultimately a depression that makes the one in the last century seem like a walk in the park. Or do this: suspend and furlough all federal workers from these departments. And I'm going to read them, and I wrote them down just so I'm very, very specific. The departments of Agriculture, Commerce, Education, Energy, Health and Human Services, Housing and Urban Development, that's HUD, H-U-D, Department of the Interior, Department of Labor, and Transportation. Suspend all of their employees, suspend their department, shut it down, furlough all of them. And while we're at it, suspend all of the rules and regulations each department enforces, and suspend all subsidies, payments, and programs that each department makes. In other words, no more welfare, no more nothing. We're going to wipe it all out. No more payments, no more agricultural subsidies, no more corporate welfare, no more rules and regs that people have to follow that do nothing more than slow the economy down. Now, when I say close things down, and I understand that a lot of these departments have names on them that makes you believe it's things we might need, like a Department of Agriculture. But then you got to ask yourself in a very logical way, can the American farmer, with all the technology and know-how and centuries of experience that he or she has, not figure out how to grow food without the government telling them how in the first place? And to even suggest otherwise is just ludicrous. As far as, paying people not to grow and everything else, look, you can't be a welfare baby, whether you're a farmer or whether you're a poor family in the inner city. And when I say family, single parent, of course, is usually the case. But anyway, we don't need it. There's just no reason. And if a state that has a lot of agriculture wants to put in its own agriculture bureau to counsel its local farmers and serve as a board or a sounding board, or whatever the case might be, fine. Let Iowa and Nebraska and Kansas and states like that do it, or California. But look, as far as the country goes, we don't need it. There's no reason for it at the federal level. Why do it? Any more than we need, for example, the Department of Commerce, as if American business couldn't promote itself. Let's just shut the whole fucking thing down, furlough all the employees, suspend all their programs. And when we do this, at the very same time, that step number 4, we also give a choice, by the way. Okay, let me back up. We're going to institute UBI, Universal Basic Income. This is an opportunity to do it. Introduce $1,000 a month, universal basic income to every adult permanently in place over the age of 21. Okay. Now, for Social Security recipients, in my last podcast, I got a lot of emails from Social Security recipients, and I'm just going to put it to you this way. You can opt either way. In other words, if you're receiving Social Security and you're over the age of, let's say, 50, and so you don't have time to make other arrangements if you're worried about $1,000 a month isn't going to be enough, then we give those people an option. They can choose to continue to receive their Social Security payments or opt for the Universal Basic Income. And for most people, they'll take Universal Basic Income because, and it's particularly in older people, you still have a lot of people where the wives didn't work and don't have much in the way of Social Security. The average Social Security benefit is only $1,438 a month, so a husband and wife collecting $1,000 each would be more than that. Most people would elect UBI anyway. But for those of you, I collect more than $1,438, but I don't collect $2,000. So, but anyway, you'll do your own math. People can opt in or opt out, and that's the fairest way to handle that. However, they only get to opt that if they have no assets and no pension income. In other words, this is for the poor people on Social Security and Social Security disability income. They get to opt whether they want to opt in or opt out of Universal Basic Income versus what they already have. If they have no assets and no other pensions, but if they have assets, if they own their home, like a lot of older people do, for cash, if they have big CDs in the bank, if they have stock accounts, so on and so forth, other things to draw upon, no choice. You go to Universal Basic Income like everybody else. Okay, we're going to protect the poor, but we're not going to protect the rich. That's just not the way it can work. And in an anti-political government, when you don't have to pander to everybody else, and the reason I want to bring in Universal Basic Income now, and the reason this is a great opportunity is The government is going to have to prop up the economy through this shutdown that we've already done. The damage is done. The horse is out of the barn. Our economy is down by a third. The European economy is down by 40%. All they're talking about is pumping more money into the economy on top of everything else in a mishmash of disaster and a spending orgy. Where under my plan, listen to my last video if you don't remember, it balances. If we go to universal basic income and we shut down the departments I just said, which basically leaves intact Defense, Treasury, Department of Justice, and the Department of State. Everything else gets shut down. We can afford universal basic income. We can prop up the economy instantly, and we can afford it without going in. Not only will we not cause an increased deficit, but we'll balance the books. We'll balance the books. We'll protect the people most at risk under this plan. We'll institute universal basic income once and for all. It'll work perfectly. It eliminates so many problems, as I talked about in my last video. And moving forward, the books are balanced and the dollar becomes stable and healthy, and we avoid jumping off the cliff. Of course, none of this is going to happen. But wait till you see. And then, of course, between this step, which is step number 5, which is the Social Security transitionary step, and step 6, which I'm about to come to, we have a period to watch what happens. You know, there's nothing wrong with saying, let's do this and let's see what happens. And that's why I said furlough the federal workers, not completely close them down. And let's watch it for 6 months and see what happens. What I know will happen, because every time we've cut taxes or regulation in the past, this is what happens, we'll get an economic boom. And since there's no penalty on earning more income over and above UBI, people will go back to work. Many of them, most of us, will go back to work and collect UBI, and the economy will boom, and the growth rate will be much more than the 1 or 2% that Obama had us believe was going to have to be something we're going to live with forever because, well, the government was chewing up so much of the economy we had to accept that was it. Well, bullshit. In my world, we're going to get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% growth every single year. Huge growth, and we're going to make some hay while the sun shines. Meanwhile, universal basic income underpinning all of it, replacing all the welfare programs, and replacing all the negative incentives. You know, you don't have to have babies out of wedlock to collect the check. You can collect your child support. I went through it in the last video. I'm not going to go over it over and over. But let's let it go 6 months. Now, at the end of 6 months, if things are going the way I think I will, we come to step 6. Actually step 6 and step 7. Step 6 is, that's it for the federal employees, they're done. They receive 1 year of their pay, they're going to collect the universal basic income, 1 year of whatever they were making. The average federal employee makes $100,000 a year, so they'll get $100,000 a year, $100,000 and a severance check, and that will be tax-free. So that's theirs to have. They collect their UBI, no more federal pensions, we're off the hook, the underfunded pensions are gone. Social Security is stable, the world is a happy place, and we move on. And then we come to the last step, which is we suspend the income tax and replace it with a value-added tax. We should have done this a long time ago. Let's get rid of the income tax. If you collect $1,000 a month under universal basic income, that's tax-free. And if you make money on top of that, that's income tax-free as well. Now, a value-added tax, just to refresh your memories, is where it's basically a wholesale sales tax. Every time value is, in other words, if you start with a piece of wood that ends up being a house, every time that piece of wood passes through the hands of the people that, you know, cut down the tree and then form the board and then, you know, cut the board and then nail it to the house. And I mean, not like I know what I'm talking about, but every time value is added to the process up until the house, there's a little tax charge at each step of the way. That's called value added. As you add value, you tax a little bit each step. That will collect far more money. The income tax was never about collecting money. The income tax was about redistribution of money. That was the idea behind a graduate income tax. The higher on the rich people, lower on the poor people, but it was just a complicated fucking mess of 11,000 pages. It was the last time I looked at it. It might be much more by now, of total confusion, and who knows what the fuck. We can do away with all that nonsense. No income tax at all. You go to work, no difference between a W-9 or a 1099. You know, it's, you make your money, you take it home, you spend it any way you want. Every time you buy something, built into the process is the value-added tax that funds the universal basic income and funds the 4 departments of government that remain, and everything else we leave to the states, and we have a freer, happier world. And we only do that. We only create the value-added tax, and we only fully shut down the government after we let the UBI run for 6 months or maybe a year and see how it all works out. We have the federal employees furloughed. They'll be collecting their paychecks. There's a lot of them, but there's not that many of them. We can afford both. We'll be in a slight deficit for a while, but compared to the ass raping we're taking now, it'll be absolutely nothing. And there will be. So let's go over the 7 steps one more time. Let me review them with you. the 7 steps that will never happen but ought to happen and would fix the country. 1, isolate the at-risk, but otherwise open up the economy. Cut the crap. Yes, by the way, wear masks. I wear a mask. I go into the grocery store. I wear it. It's very cute. It's got little saguaro cactuses on it. My son's girlfriend made it. It's really cool. But back to work, back to the restaurants, back, time to go to Denny's, time to go to Waffle House, time to open up the beaches, time to open up the parks, and let people use their common sense and isolate those that are most at risk, and stop having the police, the masked police enforcing the economy and shutting things down ad infinitum for reasons that no one can understand. Let people use their common sense. Just isolate the people that are most likely and accept the fact, just as we would if we were fighting a war, and this is a war for survival, don't kid yourself. Let's go ahead and accept that there are going to be some raised deaths, but nothing like what was projected. COVID is 10 times deadlier than the flu, but that's, the flu isn't very deadly anymore, okay? So the bottom line is, this isn't cancer, thank God. This doesn't kill children, thank God. We're going to have to, some grown-up is going to have to accept that the damage being caused by the shutdown is worse than the disease. Number 2, get the FDA, shut it down. That's part of my government shutdown. That's in step 3 anyway. Shut it down. But in the meantime, while we're shutting it down, let's get this vaccine to market and take the vaccine. And if you're nutty and don't want to take the vaccine, well, you take your chances. But I'm taking the vaccine. 3, suspend and furlough all federal workers from the Departments of Agriculture, Commerce, Education, Energy, HHS, HUD, HUD, Interior, Labor, and Transportation. All of these departments do things that aren't necessary or could be done at the state level if your state deems they're necessary. If you think you need a Department of the Interior in Wyoming, for example, then by all means have a Department of the Interior, because federal land should be state land anyway. And if you don't think you need one, then don't. Okay, let people of Wyoming make your own decision. In New York City, if you think you need an urban housing authority, then by all means go ahead and do it. I think it's a stupid idea, but if that's what you want to do and recreate housing projects, be my guest. It's just not a federal program. Okay, it's unnecessary. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it at the local level. It'll be light years better than anything that some federal monstrosity anyone dreams up. Anyway, those are just 2 small examples. And suspend all rules and regulations associated with them to free up the economy to grow, and suspend all subsidies and payments of any kind. No more agricultural subsidies, no more paying people not to work, no more welfare, no more nothing. For Social Security, going to the next step, and Social Security disability for those people that don't have other income or assets, allow them to opt whether or not they want to include themselves in what is coming in step 4, which is the universal basic income. $1,000 a month for every adult over the age of 21 in the United States. But if you are on Social Security income or disability and you choose, and you are over the age of 50 and you have no assets and no income, you can choose which one you want to be on. But for the people with assets and income of any age, everyone's going on, and below 50, everybody's going on universal basic income. Everyone's going to collect $1,000 a month forever through the government, which after we shut down all these departments, the books will balance. We will eliminate the deficit. Then, after let's call it a year, if the economy is solid, we pay a severance package of 1 year's income to every federal employee, which averages about $100,000. We shut down those departments permanently, and we never bring them back. Meanwhile, we suspend the income tax. We institute a value-added tax, which is a much smarter tax because it doesn't tax production. It doesn't tax income. It taxes the things you spend things on. It doesn't tax savings. It doesn't tax investment. It's much more logical. And since universal basic income will now be redistributing to everybody and providing a floor for every American citizen over the age of 21 and their children, there is absolutely no reason to have any other payments of any kind. We all live happily ever after. Now, none of this is going to happen. It's not going to happen as long as there are Democrats and Republicans. It's not going to happen as long as there are special interests. It's not going to happen as long as there are people who feather their nest by accumulating power and lying to all of us. They lie to us on the left and they lie to us on the right. The left wants us to take it up the ass on behalf of unions and special interests, and socialists and the people on the right want us to take it up the ass for the military-industrial complex. And for me, in the middle, and representing all of you in the middle, and hopefully all of us in the middle, all agree it's time to throw those motherfuckers out. That's why Donald Trump was elected president. Wrong man though he might be for the right reasons. That's why we must continue a populist movement. That's why we must shake up the government. That's why we must bring in an anti-political government, a government of selection, not election, that does things based on the right reasons, the right way. And if we were in an anti-political government right now, we would be turning the corner on the greatest economic boom in the history of the United States. And when the whole world saw how beautifully we did it, most of the world would convert to anti-politism as well. And just imagine a world without politicians, which would be a world without war, for the most part, except for religious and things like that, which is a big deal, but that's not a subject I'm going to discuss today. Okay, I almost slid off into a tangent right there, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to thank you very, very much for joining me. This has been fun. Think about all the points I've made. I realize this is just, talking to hear myself. I mean, God, most of what we do is just talking to hear ourselves, right? I mean, you can watch hours and hours and hours of political talk shows and hours of political podcasts, and in the end, one of these days, one of these ideas is going to catch hold and change everything. And this is the idea. It's anti-politism. So, do me a favor. Click on the subscribe button. Click on the notification button and join the movement. Join us at antipolitism.org. Join the movement. It's the very, very beginning, but we've got to change and save this country. We have to do things like what I outlined today to save our country and our culture. And if we don't, it's going to be the end. The inevitable outcome of a democracy in the situation that we're in, where it begins ignoring its own constitution and doing what it has to do, and starts talking about restricting freedoms and restricting speech and everything else that we're doing to break down our culture. We are on the road to serfdom, my friends. I'm stealing that phrase from Friedrich Hayek, a great economist, but that's where we're going. We're on a road to serfdom, a political class who treats us all as indentured servants or serfs, slaves, if you will, to them and in service of their needs to run the government. That's what basically modern monetary theory is. We're just basically a conduit for taxes. So the government can continue to do what they're doing and the people in power can continue to be in power, fucking us all up the ass in the middle class, and we have to get rid of them. And the answer to that is anti-politism. I mean, how long are you guys going to discuss socialism, which has never worked, fascism, which none of us want to talk about, socialism light, everyone's splitting hairs trying to come up with a version of a plan of a system that's never worked. Capitalism, we don't have capitalism, we have crapitalism. We're feeding the military-industrial complex with handouts, sucking off the government tit. Let's change everything. Join antipolitism.org. Press that notification button. Press that subscription button. And that's it for now. Okay, I'm done with today's discussion, and until next time, this is E.H. Ivins, signing off.